Let's take a look now at a quick demonstration of Windows Firewall. Look at the basic settings of Windows Firewall and look at where you go to configure it, some of the things you can do with it. We can configure Windows Firewall once again through the Windows Security Center, our centralized one-stop shopping for configuring most of Windows security settings. You can look at the status of Windows Firewall here and we can tell that it's on, but we can't really do any configuring from this point. This kind of gives you just some information on the quick status of it. If you want to configure it, come over here to the left-hand side and click this link right here. Now, there are other ways to configure Windows Firewall as well. There's also an applet in the control panel that you can use to configure Windows Firewall, and it gets you to this same point. Now, if we look at the Windows Firewall configuration screen, we get the opportunity to get some help here from these links. And we can also configure settings through these links right here. Now, either of these links that you configure or this change setting ones is pretty much going to get you to the same screen, just maybe a different tab. So let's click on Turn Windows Firewall On or Off, and we're going to get prompted through User Account Control to continue because this is a action that requires higher level permissions. So Windows wants to make sure that we're authorizing this. Now, had we clicked any of the other links, we would have gotten to the exceptions tab or this main tab. So it really doesn't matter. You can click either one you want to get to the same place. Now on the general tab that we see here, we see basically three settings. We can have Windows Firewall turn on, which of course is recommended, or we can have it turn off. Now that's a complete on or off thing. There's no granularity there. Now one thing we can do with the on setting is block all incoming connections. Now, we might want to do this when we're connected to a public network, such as an internet cafe or a hotel network, for example, because this will block all incoming connections. It's important to note that when you click this box, it will ignore any exceptions that we have set up, and we won't be notified when Windows Firewall blocks incoming programs. Let's look at the Exceptions tab. And on this tab is where you basically configure exceptions to the rule of blocking things. Now, there's two parts of this process. First of all, you have to add a program or a port, and then you enable it or disable it if you want to turn it off. As you can see, there's several built-in programs or exceptions rather that are already listed in here, and these are common things that are included in Windows that someone might want to block or unblock as they may need. Windows Media Player, for example. Things of that nature. Remote admin, remote desktop, file and printer sharing, which in this case is turned on. So there are some things that you can go ahead and use the defaults for, but if the defaults that are in there don't meet your needs, you can always add a program. And if you add a program, it will come up with the most common programs it finds installed on the computer, or of course you can browse and find the executable for one that you like. You can also add a port. Now, when we're talking about adding a port, we're talking about adding a network port, a TCP or UDP port, which basically is a particular address, if you will, of a protocol so that it knows to receive it or send its data on that particular opening, that port number. So we can add a port here, such as we might add port 80, for example, TCP port 80 for World Wide Web traffic. I would not configure this unless you kind of know what you're doing, because you need to know a little bit about ports and TCP and UDP and how they work before you start messing around with these settings. Now, there's an Advanced tab as well, but the Advanced tab really doesn't give you any advanced options. If you have multiple network connections, you can apply Windows Firewall settings to each of those connections. Right now, we only have one local area connection, so there's not much to configure here. But if you had, say, a Ethernet connection and a wireless connection, or two network cards, for example, you could apply the Windows Firewall settings to either one of them. For example, if one network card were facing the internet and the other one were facing a private network, you could set the Windows Firewall options to apply to the internet connection if you liked. Now, don't get confused about the Advanced tab, as it's called here. This is not where you set advanced settings such as rule sets based upon IP addresses and so forth. There's another interface completely to do that with, and that's in the Administrative Tools group. And we will look at that later on when we talk about network security settings. We'll look at the more advanced configuration settings for Windows Firewall. But for now, these are the basic ones that you need to know in order to get it turned on and get it working.